Should someone have to have a government-issued license to drive a car?
Hell no.
What's next? Requiring a license to make toast in your own damn toaster?
The license to drive? You know, I'd like to see some competency exhibited by people before they drive.
Yeah. Cannot have that. If the government is saying I need to know how to drive and be able to prove that I know how to drive, be able to not be too reckless a driver on a road test, like before I can drive a car that could potentially kill people, then I don't know. I mean, it seems like we might as well be living in Stalin's Russia. I mean, I don't see a difference.
I mean, that is the road to serfdom. That's
the first stop on the road. Well, it's the road to serfdom. That's the road to serfdom because you can't even drive on the road, without a government license. I mean, my God.
And you can't even drive till you have your government issued toast.
So later in the show at 8:30, we're going to get Larry Sharpe on to give me an argument for libertarianism. Larry was the Libertarian candidate for governor of New York in 2018. I believe he was also a unsuccessful candidate for the Libertarian presidential nomination in 2020. He did get the nomination for governor, although he did not win. Larry Sharpe is not the governor of New York right now, to be clear. But he's going to come on at 8:30, and we're going to argue about libertarianism and socialism and all of that good stuff. I do want to ask him where he would position himself. That clip is from 2016, so he's not one of those people. But had he been on that stage, I am very curious about his answer, so maybe we'll start with that. Meanwhile, though, not only do I want to bring down the steel boot of oppression on people who don't know how to drive but would still like to drive without having to show that they can do so in a safe way, I also want to bring it down on private beach owners. So this is a article that I had last week in Jacobin. It's entitled "Ban Private Beaches," and it's pretty self-explanatory since this is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. This summer, since I have been in Michigan, which I haven't really lived in year-round, except for right now during the pandemic, and after for many years, since my mid-20s. But I always love coming back here because it gives me a chance to see old friends and have good Michigan beer and also go to the lake, which is awesome. I love going swimming at the lake. And it's increasingly bothered me because the one of the lakes around here that, the one that I usually go to, there are many lakes around here, but the one I usually go to, since you can actually go there without paying for parking, so essentially being charged admission if you don't live in walking distance, was closed because of an E. coli outbreak, very rainy summer. And then I was looking around and I was like, okay, here's a top 10 list of, of beaches around here, but it's very hard to find another one that you can go to completely free of charge. And, at this point in my life, whatever, I could pay for, for an annual parking pass, at a public beach in Lansing without breaking the bank. But even just a few years ago, certainly I know in my case as an adjunct at Rutgers at that time, that would have been a big problem because, Jen and I were definitely in the spending a lot of time standing in the aisle at Walmart comparing cans of beans to see which one was 10 cents cheaper and counting off days until the next paycheck mode. And of course, many millions of people have precarious gig economy or just poverty wages kinds of jobs that are much less pleasant and comfortable than being an adjunct professor. And so this really bothers me. This seems very fundamentally unjust in a way that I think you can, on an emotional human level, I think you don't have to be a convinced socialist to be able to see that, it's one thing to say, okay, if money's tight, you might not be able to go to a movie or go out to eat for a little while, but it's you can't even swim in the lake, which is theoretically owned by the public anyway, which, since, of course, most states in Michigan, the water itself is publicly owned, and a little strip of wet sand by the water is publicly owned up until the median high tide line, but the dry sand is mostly private, which does a lot of good if you want to get to the stuff that you and I supposedly and everybody else supposedly own, because you have to cross over private property to get to it. And oftentimes to find the one public beach, like in Houghton Lake, where I've spent a lot of time this last year, the only public beach I know of in Houghton Lake, the entire downtown is like around the shore of the lake. And so you drive past about 4 miles of private businesses and expensive private homes, and you can see the lake peeking out from under them to get to the one lousy little bit of beachfront that's actually public. And it's not a particularly desirable part of it. I think it's about 3 feet deep. But this is pretty typical for a lot of places, and it's a minimalistic demand. I mean, this is not some wild-eyed socialist thing with no precedent in the real world. Like Spain doesn't allow private beaches.
I just don't understand why the plebs can't deal with their wet sand. Just go put your chair in the wet sand. Your ass is going to be a little wet. Sorry, that's just like, we can't control the tides, but you can regulate your own schedule and figure out when to put your chair down. Obviously, I'm joking. I mean, it's so absurd. I did, after Ben published this, I did text him and say that I felt personally attacked by it, but just because I have, over the course of my life, enjoyed a few stays at some private beaches, and I can tell you it tastes very sweet. It just, the sand is different, but obviously, I mean, it's just like, to me, this is like such like a no-brainer, and like it's really important, I think, to make this argument, because I think the left unfortunately sometimes gets pinned down as like, we're all about really hard mechanical uncompassionate, unfun. We're all just like, we all just want to like turn everything into like a factory town, but we want to run it ourselves. And that's just so obviously not what we want. Like, we focus on production because capitalism as an economic system focuses on production. And like, that's where most of like, economic productivity of wealth is generated. And that's where working people end up becoming situated within the system for the vast majority of their waking lives. But obviously, like, we want people to have full control over the full gambit of what they do in their life, in their day, in their week, in their especially in their time off. Of course, like if we have to be stuck under capitalism, it freaking sucks that like when you're not in the workplace, private property and bosses broadly still control how we have to end up living our lives. Like, at the very least, when we get when we get time off, we should be able to, have as much leeway and democratic possibility to do whatever we want to do with our time. And if you live near a coastline, you should be able to go to the beach. Like, I think like it's
pretty basic.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. It's something. It's more than just pleasure. It's like, I don't know, something like psychologically greatly like pleasurable and rewarding to be able to like be around like bodies of water. Like, I'm getting a little hippie right now, but like that's
that's clearly true. And in fact, there's even there is even evidence, studies that that show that. But I mean, just on a common sense level, even without the studies, I mean, that's just obviously true. And it's ridiculous that if you have enough money, you can violently, by the way, if you want to play that game, the usual libertarian thing, exclude people from being allowed to enjoy it. That's obscene. Now, I do have another Jacobin article that came out yesterday, actually.
Before we move on, I have one more point I want to make about the beaches. Yep. That's okay. Yep. Because friend of the show, Harvey K, sent me after he had read the article. He sent me an episode from Michael Moore's TV Nation, where like Michael Moore's people. It's not Mike himself, but he has I believe it's one of his like producers, I guess. She and a bunch of people that are just supposed to obviously look like urban working class people, it's mostly like brown and black people, are trying to get to the private beach at Greenwich Village, in Greenwich, in Connecticut. And they can't just park there, and then they end up storming the beach on a boat. And it's funny, it's good TV. But like the obvious, like again, it's not maybe not obvious, but like the thing is, like, the political prescription out of this isn't to like get mad at people who go to private beaches. This is a defense of me. Like that, they're not the problem exactly, like, because they didn't set up.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, by and large, they're not. I mean, they're beneficiaries of an injustice. But I mean, like the point, But the point is that what they're doing is what everybody should be able to do,
right,
which is to go to those beaches.
Yeah.
Do you have something you want to add, Andy? Oh, you're muted, but.
I'm just like digging the whole flashback to TV Nation, because back in high school, we would have like pool parties on Friday nights, and we would all stop what we're doing, go inside for half an hour, and watch TV Nation.
Yeah, I am also old enough that I actually watched that when it was on. I do remember that. Although I also remember that that at least the local station in Lansing would like any excuse to preempt that and like kick that off the game for like a preseason football game or something. They always seem to be suspiciously eager to do. But the other Jackman article I wrote this week, I think we're actually going to save for the post game because I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about something that actually just happened. I don't know, earlier this evening. Which is a little exchange, and it's a small thing. It's a Twitter exchange, but I think it's interesting, at least as a jumping off point for talking about more important things, with a fellow named James Lindsay, scourge of critical race theory, or what he imagines critical race theory to be, and Marxism, or what he imagines Marxism to be, and also axe enthusiast. You can find that online. James Lindsay showing off his skills with his axe, but yeah, do we have the original Lindsay tweet? So that this tweet says critical race theory, stages of history. By the way, he claims to be a world level expert on critical race theory, which I guess means that the only people who get to push back are like galaxy level experts or universe level experts.
That's why we're taking him on.
If he was a world expert, that would be a problem, because the only person who I know who's a world expert is my wife. So
there you go.
Good plug for Andy's wife.
Yes.
So critical race theory stages of history: 1, primitive equity; 2, slavery; 3, segregation and apartheid; 4, colorblind equality; 5, racial equity, in parentheses, dictatorship of the anti-racists; 6, racial justice. So of course what he's doing here is he's taking the sort of schematic version of the Marxist theory of history. You start out with primitive communism. You have like tribal societies that don't have that haven't been divided into a class of producers and a ruling class. So that's primitive communism, and then you have you've got like ancient Rome style, like ancient slave societies and feudalism and capitalism, and then eventually, inshallah, socialism. So he's, the point of it's like kind of clever by the standards of what he's doing, is to do what he always does, which is to say critical race theory is basically like Marxism. So I happened to be on Twitter and see that, and so I responded to it. That's the second tweet, to say this is basically an update of Jordan Peterson's Marxism equals postmodernism equals censorious blue-haired college kids thesis, with a little bit more effort put into explaining it, which actually makes it even goofier. So straightforward. And then he quote tweeted that. So that's the third one. Says, I just realized that they mad. Not they are mad, by the way. They mad.
Oh, they big mad.
They mad about that tweet. Of course they are. Lol. Target symbol. To which I finally replied, and I have oddly not gotten an answer to this yet.
I think it's a bullseye. He's implying he bullseyed us.
Yes. So I reply, they, in this case, meaning people who actually know what Marxism is and are thus know how absurd it is to equate it with critical race theory and to equate that in turn with every vaguely woke race-related things that bugs you. But more than happy to have an off-Twitter conversation about this with you, James. And oddly enough, despite his earlier participation in the interaction, he let that one go. Maybe he's mulling it. But I just wanted to say a few things about this because, James Lindsay is one of the leading lights of the movement to freak everybody out about critical race theory on the right. I guess Chris Rufo is maybe eclipsed him as the even bigger spokesman of that, but otherwise it's pretty much Lindsay. And so this is something everybody on the right is fixated on now. Because this is their culture war obsession of the week, that they're trying to teach your kids critical race theory in high school, and God knows what that'll lead to. And on the left, there are a few different ways that people have responded. One of which, and this one is kind of fair, is to say they're not really teaching critical race theory in high schools. Critical race theory is something that really is mostly taught in law schools a little bit, to undergrads, because it comes out of critical legal studies. And from Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw, other figures kind of developing and out of that tradition. And that's kind of true, although it is probably true that there's some, anti-racist pedagogy that might, make its way to high school here and there that is influenced, by CRT ideas. And I wouldn't lean too hard on they know totally nothing that's ever taught in any high school, has anything in common with, with what anything CRT theorists are saying. They're not teaching Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw in high school, but there might be some affinity with some stuff and the level of ideas. But then oftentimes the way that people on the left will reply to it is by saying, no, this is what they're upset about is just history, like U.S. history classes teaching that like racism existed and was a big deal in American history or something like that, even though obviously that's not a new development. That as we just established, Andy and I both went to high school in the Neolithic period, and it's not like they didn't like talk about the civil rights movement and stuff like that in high school. Certainly if you lived in the state that I did, you had annual Martin Luther King Day assemblies and all of that stuff. But then I think there are really two different issues that deserve to be separated here. Maybe three, which to run through them really quickly, so we can talk about them before Larry comes on, are one, the sort of heavy-handed attempt at legislative censorship directed at CRT, or at what people vaguely imagine CRT is, which even if the specific stuff that might be pissing them off isn't just acknowledging that racism exists in history class, that doesn't mean that broadly written laws in some of these states won't in fact make it more difficult to talk about racism in history class, because sometimes it varies from state to state, but sometimes the language is vague. And in any case, I mean, empowering censors always leads to tons of stupid censorship that might even be pretty distant from the original purpose. I mean, just look at what, I mean, Andy had, Facebook suspended him for sharing a article written by a very mild-mannered fellow. He was on the show last week, Nathan Robinson, which we can, I think we have the graphic of. That was bullying, which is a small example of how empowering censors leads to like crazy censorship that has nothing to do with the original alleged point just routinely, because you're empowering people to make these decisions. Oftentimes bureaucrats will err on the side of like a very broad interpretation. So I think the censorship is very bad and should be opposed, right? That's the first thing. But then the second thing is, okay, but how about critical race theory itself, the actual theory? Like, is that good or bad, or a mixture? And a lot of people on the left have the impulse to sort of look the way culture wars work. You know, if the other team puts a plus on something, you put a minus. If they put a minus, you put a plus. So I think a lot of people get very defensive about anything that they see as being attacked by the right. And then the third related issue is how should we what should we make of this equation that Lindsay keeps on doing and Rufo keeps on doing between critical race theory and Marxism? Because like, short version of the hot take, I think that that like Lindsay and Rufo are out of their minds on this subject. The two have very little to do with each other, and as such, being a Marxist, I am a bit critical of critical race theory for Adolf Reedish sort of anti-essentialist reasons, and to understand how this works, like why this is what that criticism looks like. I think it is good to have as a starting point Nathan's article, because most people with strong opinions about this stuff, pro or con, don't really know, certainly on the level of academic theory or literature, what critical race theory is. And if you want to know what critical race theory is, I think Nathan's article is a great place to start. I think he lays a lot of it out very, very clearly, and has a lot of the virtues that I really appreciate in Nathan's writing. He's always clear. He's always very explicit about what his argument is. I remember Mikey Utrecht put it to me once that, you know, it's like so many people writing about something, the tone of it is, hey, I know all about this, so I'm going to generously let you in on it. Whereas with Nathan, the tone is often more like, hey, I'm figuring this stuff out, but I'm going to sort of like let you in on my thought process as I figure it out, you know, which I think is a really useful way to write about something like this. But reading the article, I think actually makes it a little clear both why Lindsay is a complete lunatic on this stuff, but also why why I think there is like a good Marxist anti-essentialist critique to be made of some of these ideas. So basically the core of what critical race theory is it starts from an absolutely correct observation, which is that the achievement of formal legal equality between the races in the 1960s did not end racial disparities. Most obviously in, well, policing, incarceration, and really underlying that, poverty. That those were not ended by having formal legal equality of opportunity. That there's some other problem here. And if you're not going to go all bell curve on it, or you're not going to have some kind of, you know, goofy culturalist explanation about how people just need to pull their pants up or something, then that has to do with some sort of social structure. So far, so good, right? Nothing in any of what I just said is wrong. But I think to kind of see how, like why, contrary to what Lindsay is saying, that there is going to be some divide between Reed-style anti-essentialist Marxists and critical race theorists, I think a really good starting point is where Nathan starts in the article. This short story written by Derek Bell, one of the main founding fathers of critical race theory, called The Space Traders, which is about some aliens who come to Earth and basically decide that they want to like re-enslave all the black people, and that, you know, if the white people will sell them all the black people to take away, they'll share, I don't know, alien technology or some sort of bounty with Earth, and then there's a secret ballot, and the white people vote to sell the black people to the aliens. That's the end of the story. And the thing is, and so in Nathan's explanation, he said, well, his first reaction when he had to read this in like law school was, it's a little goofy. First of all, as literature, it feels like a short story written by a law professor, and then secondly, although he certainly agrees with all the stuff I just laid out, it seems to sort of misrepresent like how racism really works now. It's a sort of unhelpful, exaggeration of it. But then he said the more he thought about it, the more he decided that the story, that the lesson of the story was right. After all, think about all these racial disparities, from policing to healthcare to wage levels to everything else, and the ways that they result in many Black people dying earlier than the average of everybody. And so, isn't this essentially being willing to trade Black lives for other social benefits of keeping certain structures in place? And this at last gets us to the critical nub, which is, I think, a very simple way of seeing the point is, well, hold on. If we are metaphorically selling a lot of the Black population to the space traders, which sure, in a sense we are also selling a pretty big chunk of the non-Black population to the space traders. And we're not selling all the Black population to space traders, because prejudice might impact people, but as far as what Nathan's talking about, these disparities that that impact lives, Barack Obama and Kanye West are not impacted by that, right? Oprah is not impacted by that. Whereas lots of white people in the Rust Belt and the Appalachians and everywhere, right? But I mean, those let's let those two stand in symbolically, are impacted by it, and lots of people of other races are being sold to the space traders in this metaphor, because the real thing is that it's not just saying here's this category called race that is this sort of primary explanatory thing, gets your eye off the actual ball, which is capitalism. That, of course, we have these racial disparities. The number of people being sold to the space traders are disproportionately Black, because the way that just regular capitalist property relations freeze in place the results of past legal apartheid up until the 1960s, later in some ways. So of course, that's what accounts for that disparity. But the basic thing is not the disparity. The basic thing is that anybody is being sold to the space traders. That's a problem that Black people are disproportionately more likely than some of the groups to have. But it's a problem for everybody who's being sold to the space traders. And there's a solution for everybody, which is to see it as a common problem and to have working class solidarity to blow up the spaceship. At this point, the metaphor's slipping, but that would be my critique of what CRT actually is.
Right. Well, and part of it also is just, because the vast majority of people who are not the Twitter intellectuals or the politicians, the vast majority of people, ordinary people who are thinking about critical race theory right now, their principal objection to it is not, it's not about a legal interpretation or a Marxist, that it's not Marxist enough or something. Obviously, what most people take away from this is, professors are saying that we're all racist and we're bad people. And so the way it filters into the culture war is just, it's another instantiation of professional people bullying working people from the working class perspective on this. And so I think the left's argument against this is to say, one, we're not engaging in the culture war. It's not worth it when conservatives say, one thing that we should automatically switch and say the opposite. That's just so not true. It's because then we're going to end up, because the dominant alternative is typically going to be liberalism. And it's not going to be a sufficient answer for these problems. But for most working people, I think it's fine to say you're not just irredeemably racist. You're not a horrible, terrible, bad person. Most of you are probably pretty good people who have morals, who care about other people, who care about their family and want good outcomes for others. The big kind of insight that the left has made when it comes to ideologies of oppression is the fact that ideologies have to have a material base, and that since the civil rights movement, where Jim Crow and political segregation has been done away with. The reason why there are persistent inequities when it comes to race is economic. Like these are economic differences when it comes to healthcare, housing, job markets, and that's where it's
even policing. I mean, like it's
right.
certainly not the case that like, because the problem is when you have this sort of analysis that there's this some sort of oftentimes not really well defined category called race that you presumably don't mean something biological, but then what do you mean? And they then I think like what people are really talking about are what's sometimes called P plus P, prejudice plus power, which is basically
Right.
decision makers make decisions on the racial prejudice, which certainly does happen. That is part of the problem. I mean, like there are, definitely like there's lots of statistical evidence you can look at, in terms of decision making by police officers, for example, that supports that, or other kinds of decision makers in other contexts. But that's not the main reason for the disparities in policing and incarceration. The main reason for the disparities in policing and incarceration, never mind the rest of this, is that that kind of aggressive militarized policing is primarily a problem in poor neighborhoods. And Black people are disproportionately likely to live in poor neighborhoods because of everything that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And this is like if people want to say, it became kind of fashionable for a while to say, race is a social construct. And it's like, okay, if that's the term you want to use to describe race, fine. But the social and the social construct, the social is referring to society. It's referring to predominantly economic categories. Like so like when you say there's a racial disparity, it's like not that race has a life unto its own. It's that it points to other actual material factors, because race is not a real thing. There's no such thing as like actual race in biological terms. If it's like socially constructed, it's because it's like pointing to geography, it's pointing to phenotypes, it's pointing to economics. There is in fact no real divisions among human beings. And so like the left's project has to be, just wiping away of like these massive inequities. Not that everyone's going to end up in like perfectly, everyone gets exactly the same amount of income or something, but like there shouldn't be, as like at the level of categories of people, there should not be inequities. And that's also going to mean down the line, like, we want to move as far away as we can from a racial worldview where we arbitrarily categorize people into these, well, you're white because XYZ, you're Black because XYZ, that we see, pigment as the predominant means of categorizing people.
I mean, or some weird combination of ancestry and like, I'm not sure exactly what. Like I've seen like leftists having like discussions about whether like Jewish people or like Ashkenazi Jewish people are objectively white or not. It's like, man, this sounds like a discussion the far right would be having, right? Like, because the obvious answer is no, because nobody is, because there's no such thing. But we need to bring in Larry. But Andy, do you have a last thought about this?
Not really. Just to clear it up, I called the person a coward for not reading the article. It wasn't for posting the article.
That was the
I think. Yeah, it's like man up and read the article, you coward, because your ideology is so fragile. A simple little article is going to make you cry, something like that.
Wow. All right, that is.
Yeah, I was being mean.
That is some pretty intense bullying.
I guess Facebook was right.
Yeah, no, that's awful. I can't believe you did that. All right.
Yeah. I guess I'm fired. Bye, everybody.
All right. See you, Andy. No, but we should bring on Larry Sharpe. So Larry was the Libertarian candidate for governor of New York in the 2018 election. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. And also a candidate for the Libertarian nomination in 2020.
No. 2016 for the
Oh,
BP.
2016 nomination. Okay.
Yeah, I was beaten by Bill Weld by 32 votes. Not that I'm counting. Stop counting, Ben. I'm not counting. 32 votes. I'm not counting. You're
Okay.
accountable. So
Fair enough. Before we get into it, is there anything else you want to say by way of introducing yourself?
that's fine. If anyone cares, Google Larry Sharpe. I'm everywhere. If you care, I hope I impress your audience enough to where they care and they Google Larry Sharpe. That'd be amazing. Please do so if you care.
Fair enough. So 2016. So that actually sets this up perfectly, since there was this famous clip from the 2016 Libertarian Convention that I think the version of the clip I saw must have cut off before it got to your answer. But now I am very curious. Is it oppressive?
You mean the clip when it was for the presidency? The presidency?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I was a nominee for the vice president.
Oh, okay. You were okay, right? So
yes, so I was not part of that debate.
Nomination.
Yes,
okay.
That debate was a farce. I can't believe they let Larry Elder do that. Oh, it was terrible.
So
yeah.
So what? So if you had been there, like what would have been your position?
I did debate. If you want to watch my debate, you can go if you want to. It's Larry Sharpe, the vice president debate. I debated Bill Weld and two others who were also running for the VP at that point. It was we were very diverse. It was me, a Muslim, a woman, and Bill Weld. So yeah, we were actually diverse. It was a good time there. So yeah, one thing I want to bring up, I think we agree on certain things. I know a lot of people in your world take a lot of massive dumps on us libertarians. I know that's true. But I still love you guys. Doesn't matter. I think we agree on ending embargoes. I think we are exactly in the, with each other agreeing with ending embargoes. I think we agree on culture war being nothing but distraction, just bad in general, right? I mean, I think culture wars are terrible. They're not helping us at all. And I think the ownership mindset is a wonderful thing. I think you and I disagree kind of on how ownership should work, but I think we both agree that ownership is a way out of poverty. It's a way out of a bad mindset. It's a way to move people forward. So I think we can start on something positive, at least.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure that there are. I would imagine that there are a lot of, that certainly anti-war stuff, certainly, opposition to the drone war, to surveillance,
Sure.
to the drug war. I'd imagine you probably want to abolish ICE. So all of that stuff is going to be areas of agreement, which is definitely worth noting, before we get into the areas of disagreement. But what I was going to ask is, if you had been asked the driver's license question, what would you have said?
Why do we care about driver's license is what I would have said. This is a national election. It's a state issue. Let the states handle it. What's the problem?
You ran for governor of New York. Do you think that New York should be licensing drivers?
Why not? Why do I care about that? These kind of questions are insane. I don't care about driver's license at all. You know what I do care about in New York State? In New York State right now, if you get a certain number of DUIs, I think 3 and maybe 4 even, you lose your license in perpetuity forever, no matter what, and it's retroactive. So the state now takes away your driver's license forever. So to be forward, if you get 3 DUIs, you've never hurt anybody, so you didn't actually commit a crime in that regard. But DUI is a crime, and it should be a crime. I'm okay with that. But the idea is now it's 5 years later or 10 years later, and you've actually cleaned your life up. You haven't had a drunk. You haven't done anything. You've passed all your tests. You've done everything as you've actually taken the loss of your driver's license as a way of squaring your life away. And now you do that. And New York State will still not give you a license. And not just that, there's actually all the states recognize that. So you can't drive in the country ever again. They've taken away your livelihood in the case of when you've made yourself better. I'm not against them hammering you if you get 3 DUIs. What I'm against is the state not giving you a second chance when you've shown that you've done what they want you to, because they make you go through a series of, do your tests, do this, go to your things over the course of years. They don't give it back. And it's the second reason why I'm unhappy. If we're going to talk about driver's licenses in family court, the family court right now, if you have trouble paying, it's almost only males, but women too, but almost only males. If you're a father and you don't pay your child support on time, or you lose your job or whatever, they take your driver's license. So now how are you supposed to make money to go pay your child support? There's no second chance. I don't mind the state
well,
having driver's license. What I hate is the state using the driver's license to punish people in perpetuity, keep them poor, keep them down, and not give them a second chance at life. That I'm bothered.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I agree with all that, and I think that it's obviously had like a vastly less punitive criminal justice system. I'm a big fan of giving people more second chances. That's all an area of agreement. But as slightly goofy as it is, I think the reason that the driver's license question is important is because it's a maybe vivid example of a larger question that's important, which is like, what's the legitimate role of the state in promoting safety, like in this case. And so there are libertarians. Well, I mean, on the one end, there's Gary Johnson, who was booed for saying that he was okay.
I love Gary Johnson. I'm a big Gary Johnson. I came in because of Gary Johnson. I came in 2012 because of Gary Johnson. I'm a big Gary Johnson fan. Love Gary Johnson. Love him to death.
Okay. All right. So and in the range of libertarian views, going from like Johnson on one end to people on the other end who think that the driver's license thing should be moot, since all the roads should be privatized and the road owner just gets to decide who drives on the road. So just to try to
hold on one second. You know that I was a candidate, right? Not an activist.
I mean, I know what I know about you is pretty much what I said at the beginning. So you tell me.
Yeah, I'm a candidate, which means I have actual policies. I don't think about theory and stuff. I don't talk about we should destroy the state. I've never said any of that stuff. I'm a candidate in New York State. So I have actual policies that can function within New York State to make the state freer, to make people have better service, who support the poor and the working poor and the middle class without raising taxes and without using force. What makes me libertarian isn't the fact that I want to blow up the state or whatever the activist wants. That's not what makes me libertarian. What makes me libertarian is I actually want to support the working poor and middle class without force and without extra taxes. That's what I want. That is my goal. If I can do that, I'm winning. I believe in my heart that if you want the poor and working class to be better off, the best way of doing that is not to necessarily try to knock down the Goliaths, or worse, to replace Goliaths, which with the state, which is another Goliath, but instead to create many Davids, lots and lots of Davids that can either become Goliaths on their own or knock Goliath down on their own. I have to create an environment in a society to make that happen. I do not see that happening at all in the way we're working right now.
Well, let's talk about the stuff that you'd object to as being too Goliathy a way of helping the working poor. I mean, so one, for example, there was a attempt to create a public health insurance plan in New York at one time, the New York Health Act, and I'm guessing that you would oppose that as being too Goliathy, or no?
Yeah, my worry about healthcare is I see what's happening right now, particularly in New York City, but throughout the country. Most of the best doctors in New York City, and I will always speak about the country, but I always focus on New York because I know it best. So what I see happening in New York City is many of the best doctors are simply not taking insurance anymore. They're just not taking it. Like, nope, pay by cash. That's all you're going to get, nothing else. And if you have, we'll tell you, we'll give you a bill you can hope your insurance reimburses, but that's it. So what's wound up happening is you're having two tiers of healthcare right now. You have the wealthy who go to people who don't take insurance, and the poor who go to whoever will take insurance. That's what's happening now. And there's a massive difference in the service level you're going to get. And you've probably seen it if you, I don't know if you have that world where, do you live, where do you live, by the way? I'm sorry.
Well, it's a little complicated. I'm about to move, but right this second, Michigan.
Okay. So you may not know New York City specifically, but if you do, that's how it's working right now. So if you go to a doctor's office now that takes insurance, generally speaking, your appointment's at 2:00, you get seen 3:15. You're waiting in an hour and a half in a room that people tend to not care about you much at all. They're more worried about photocopying your documents than you. And when the doctor does see you, it's 15 minutes, and it always ends in one of three things. It ends in either a test, a procedure, or prescription. Always. Why? Because that's how the doctor gets paid. The incentive right now is for the doctor to make sure you're sick. It is equivalent of back in the day, the old computer fixing model, the break fix model. They'd only fix your computer once they broke, and they'd hope your computers would break so they can keep charging you by the hour so they can fix your computers. So what did they do? They changed that model completely. Now, let me go instead now to the private model right now. If I'm wealthy and I just swipe my credit card or write a check, I go to a nice room that's really nice. My appointment's at 2. Maybe it gets in at 2:05 at best. That's it, right? Then when I sit there, the doctor talks to me. The doctor asks me, how are you eating? How are you sleeping? What's your stress level? I have a nice long conversation. Why? Because the doctor got paid already. Card got swiped, or I gave him a check. The doctor's fine. That's how the doctor gets paid. And wealthy people get that type of service. What I would like, instead of making a larger Medicare, Medicaid system, which is still the break-fix model, I would like to expand the rich people model. So the poorer people get a better model. There are several examples of this now. One of them is the company Forward.
Before we do the examples, I just want to be clear on this because you did say two things that I certainly agree with. That it's bad that we have a multi-tier health insurance system, and care system that the quality of care that that you get is different based on who you are. And that the profit incentives of doctors are often bad and don't lead to ideal care. All very true. But looking around the world, it seems to me that a really excellent way of dealing with both of these things would be for everybody to have one tier of care, because the state would be the single payer for medical costs, which is extremely popular everywhere that it's ever been implemented, and seems to certainly even in like Canada, it doesn't include dental and vision like it should, but the basic healthcare Medicare for all model is so popular that even Canadian conservatives have to pretend that they support it, or they're not going to win another election. Same thing with the NHS in Britain. And it seems very unrealistic to me that you're going to get a single tier of care for everybody. If bottom line, you still have doctors who are being paid either by insurance or by individuals. Either of those things seem like they would still lead to that. So how do we get around that?
Sure. Are you, and this is a question I have, are you advocating for this is the only system, meaning that private insurance would be illegal and or paying for a doctor out of pocket would be illegal? Are you advocating for that?
Yes, I am. So I'd also be curious about what you think about public option plans, but I think that you don't get, if you have just a public option alongside private options, you don't get most of the benefits of a completely public system. You certainly don't get.
I have an actual policy that will move us towards that. I do.
Okay, let's do it.
There are two pieces. I'll tell you my policy and why I don't like what you advocate for. My policy would be one that would move us towards this. This can't change overnight without violence or crazy upheaval. It would never get voted for. Everything is just, there's no way it would happen in my state. It's what either one of us is asking for is just not going to happen. It's without horrible disruption that will hurt just literally millions of people. I would like that to not be the case.
Okay, wait a second. So having Medicare for all that disrupt necessarily get that would hurt millions of people?
Yes, because to make that happen, the powers that be right now, particularly in my state, but in most states, are much against it. So they're going to do everything they can to stop it. That's what I'm saying. That the people right now who are in power are not going to accept this, which means they're going to do everything they can to stop it. And they are literally going to go out of their way to crush people because they make billions of dollars on this. So it's not going to happen is what I'm telling you. Now, maybe there are states that it could happen. Maybe it can happen in Vermont or something.
In New York right now, you have a majority in both the Assembly and the Senate co-sponsoring just that. It's been held back by the Democratic leadership, but that's a political struggle. That doesn't seem like it would be something that would have to, you'd have to spill rivers of blood or anything to win that
I'm
fight.
Sorry. Maybe my words were a little bit hyperbole. Maybe they were. I didn't mean that people would die, like you would be killing them. What I meant is, if we try to fight on this to make this single payer piece happen in New York State, nothing will change. So the people now who are in trouble stay in trouble, right? The people now who don't have good health care keep that bad health care. That's what I meant. The wealthy are going to be fine. They're good. They'll leave the state. They'll do whatever. They'll fly to France, whatever. They'll do what they got to do. But the poor people now are the working poor and the middle class who don't actually, it's more the middle class and the working poor than the actual poor. The working poor and the middle class, they're struggling right now to have decent health care and decent health care insurance. If we fight on this, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm telling you from my experience in my state, this is going nowhere for years. And if this goes nowhere for years, because you said it, the Democratic leadership is stopping it. Yeah, because they're all in a pocket of these guys. So they're not going anywhere. So it's not going to go anywhere. So what I have now is a realistic situation to where nothing's going to happen. So people are going to struggle for years, maybe decades. I don't know how long, but surely for years. That's what I meant by having horrible outcomes. And there are 18 million New Yorkers. So there's a lot that makes millions of people who are going to be in trouble. What I'm saying is that's why I don't want to do that. I don't see that happening. So I think I have another answer, which I think is a better answer.
Oh, let's do it.
And my answer is actuaries right now know about how much money you're going to spend on your either Medicare or Medicaid. They already know, right? They have your little box, whatever. You're a 40-something-year-old, male with a pre-existing condition, blah, blah. Odds are you're going to spend X dollars. And say, for the example, sake of argument, it's $3,000. I'm making that number up just for argument. And they know that you're going to spend about $3,000. So what do? Literally, I give you a debit card with $3,000 on it. And I say, here's $3,000, Ben. Here's your money. You can spend it with any doctor you want. Just swipe the card and you can use it. Any doctor you want. Just go do it. But you only get $3,000 on this. After that, you got to go back to regular Medicaid or Medicare. So I'm not keeping you. You still have a safety net, but I'm giving you $3,000 up front. If you want to go to the cool doctors, you can. Any doctor you want, you could go. Or if you go too far, you go back to Medicare. Up to you. So you have a safety net. But I'm giving you the choice to make that happen. What do I believe will happen? I think most people will change nothing because most people don't. But there will be early adopters because there always are. Early adopters will go, you know what? Let me go to the cool doctors for a while. And they'll start going. They'll swipe the credit card. And when they swipe a debit card, they'll get the cool stuff that they like. They'll get better care. Doesn't matter whether they're poor or old or rich. Doesn't matter. If you're on Medicaid or Medicare, you get the cool doctor. When you like that, you'll want more of it. You'll think more about your health care. Number one. Number two, the people who now the doctors don't take insurance will go, wait a minute, I can get Medicare and Medicaid money without having all this admin? Yeah, no admin. Swipe a card, man. Don't got to have forms, nothing. You don't have to have 14 people in your office fighting for getting your money out of Medicare, Medicare. None of that. Swipe the card. What I believe will happen is the pricing will begin to come down as they move towards those people to bring them in. I want the culture to move towards direct care. Why? Because in direct care, you are the customer, not the government. When the government is the customer, you are in the way. I don't want you in the way. I want you as the customer. Because I also want to encourage, along with that, I want to encourage companies like Forward. And if you happen to know what Forward is, but Forward is basically a subscription model, right? You pay $150 a month. It's heavily automated, but you get all the healthcare you want, period. No matter what. No copay, nothing. $150 a month. Now, not everyone can afford $150 a month. I get that. But whatever you could create to begin to make that happen. If I've got my debit card, yeah, I can. I could use my debit card to join one of these. This is like the gym model. They're all about prevention. You agree to join Forward. Literally, they check you every month. They don't want you to come in. They want you to be healthy because they get the $150 no matter what. So it would also encourage that. Now you might say, well, Larry, there are some people who couldn't even afford that. You're right. Now, if you're at a point where you have no address, if that's where you are, you go to emergency room anyway. I mean, I get it. You're going to go there anyway. I got it. That maybe we need to have some kind of negative income tax to help them out, or UBI style, maybe for that. But that's done. But for the average working poor or middle class person, they can afford the $150, and if they're on Medicare, Medicare, they can swipe. If not, they can afford $150, far less than they're paying now. But even better, now once you have enough of companies doing that, you can now incentivize those companies. the government can say something like, as an example, you can say, hey, I tell you what, if you'll take 10% of your population as poor, as we, the government, decide poor, however the government decides that, maybe it's, families who are available for school lunch. I'm making that up for sake of argument. Then we will say that you have to pay no state payroll tax while you do that. Now, for a smaller organization, not that big of a deal. But for large organizations, that's a big deal. They'll take in anyone, which means now any working poor person and any middle class person can get the same quality of Medicare of medical help that anybody else could. That doesn't take 5 minutes. That's a multi-year plan. I get that. But it's a long-term plan to change how we think about healthcare. That's what I want to do.
So the $3,000 healthcare equivalent to the bridge card, would that, so just to be clear, that's not means tested. That's for everybody.
No. That is for someone who's on Medicare or Medicaid now. Okay. That's what it's for. For someone who is right now on Medicare or Medicare right now, right? They would get their card up front. If they run out, they still can go back to Medicare, right? But they just don't get the special cool card.
That answers my question. So
yes.
So if that's the case, then it seems to me that if you want to give people concretely, if this were up for vote or something, do you give people $3,000? That's sure, but if we're thinking about solutions and what that looks like and whether that really gets to the nub of the problem with the American healthcare system, then I think when we look at actual bridge cards and how that's played out politically, when you have a benefit that is only for people who meet certain kinds of means testing requirements. In this case, it would just be whatever it already is for Medicaid. Yep. Then what that does in practice, I think, is it makes it extremely politically vulnerable because most people don't think they'll ever need means tested benefits, even if they really will. They don't think they will, and so it's easier to cut it than it is something that's a universal program for everybody that everybody is.
I don't understand what that means. What do you mean? You mean the government will cut
it? Politically easier to cut because if you
politically easier.
If you have something that's a universal program like Medicare in Canada or the NHS in Great Britain, that's something that everybody except maybe people who are so rich that they'd actually be net better off without it. But they have but everybody more or less understands that it benefits them and feel very defensive about that. That's again why Tories, can't have to at least pretend that they basically like the idea of the NHS when they run for office, even if they undermine it in small ways. Whereas, with means tested benefits, you can just do like, Bill Clinton in the 90s and run on, I'm going to end welfare as we know it. And people cheer because they think that, that's for these moochers who aren't like me. I'm never going to need this. So that's one problem I see with it. The other problem is that I think the nature of health insurance, of health costs, is that they are extremely unpredictable. That you don't know from month to month necessarily, what's going to happen. And of course, like every other commodity, if it continues to be treated as a commodity, prices don't just stay static, right? I mean, especially if you're pumping,
they go down.
Well, I think that's a open empirical question. I mean, if you gave a lot more people more money.
No. I'll give you an example of it. Okay. There is a medical field that's right next to the medical field, which is the non-essential, right? The non-essential fields in medicine. LASIK eye surgery, cosmetic dentistry, body enhancements, things like that. It's right next to it. I mean, they're right next to each other, right? And in every case, price has gone down, technology has gone up, accessibility has gone up, improved every single time. When I was a kid, LASIK eye surgery, you used to do it per eye because it was too expensive to do 2 eyes. That's how expensive it was when I was a kid. Now, anybody gets it. Cosmetic dentistry used to only be for like stars or something, right? Used to be this for only like superstars. Now lots of people get cosmetic dentistry, right? I think when you take it out of the government, in that case, in every way, it's gotten better. More accessibility, not perfect, but
hold
more
on,
accessibility.
Because you're like, certainly it's true that there are things that have gone down in price over time from when it's new technology to et cetera. That's absolutely true.
Sure.
But it is also true that that many healthcare costs go up over time. And if you want to say, oh, okay, well, that's all because of government involvement, and if we just and if we have less government involvement, that
no, it's insurance company involvement. It's government and insurance company involvement. Both of those two. It is both government and insurance company involvement. Both of those combined. It isn't just government's fault. It's also insurance company's fault.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, but I mean, but it's also the case that if we look at countries like Canada or the UK and compare to the United States in terms of cost, the overall amount of money spent by everybody on healthcare is lower in those places than it is in the U.S., despite the fact that the government role is much larger. In fact, the government role is the role. It's the single payer of doctors, in the system, and people would seem to get better care. Certainly, if you look at comparative life expectancy, and you can try to blame that on lifestyle factors. I think I grew up close enough to the Canadian border, spend enough time there. I'm pretty skeptical about the lifestyle explanations, but you have, seem like a lot of Canadians, drink a lot of beer and eat a lot of Tim Hortons, but then you
sure
can,
they do.
And then, but even if you buy that, I mean, you can look at the differences in infant mortality. I think the infant lifestyles are pretty similar, and certainly you can look at the overall figure of mortality amenable to healthcare. How many people, per thousand or per million are dying from things that, timely health interventions could have prevented, and that's also. And those figures are also better in those systems. So I guess what I'm really curious about, and maybe this takes us back to the larger point you made earlier about Davids and Goliaths, is you've been kind of framing your opposition to Medicare for all or the state level equivalent, which would really be a public option because you can't really do Medicare for all in a single state. You've been framing that in terms of political viability. Well, we're just not going to get this soon. But I do want to press on this a little bit.
The second piece, that one, and I also want to change how we look at healthcare. So there were two parts of that. But please keep going.
Okay, so if the political struggle was won at some point, and you were convinced that this actually is now a politically viable thing, that this could happen or could happen in the short term, would you then say, oh great, we can have Medicare for all, or would you say nope, too Goliathy, taxes, force, I don't like that?
There are two parts to this. The one thing I don't like with the Goliathy piece is that there's no other option. In Europe, there actually is. In almost every European country, the wealthy people have supplemental insurance, which is another form of insurance they get, not even often in their country, sometimes outside their country, sometimes in their country, but they get another form of insurance. They insure themselves some other way so they can go to other countries and get stuff. Medical tourism is a thing for the wealthy. So the wealthy actually get a second tier anyway, even in European countries that have that. They already do get that.
In some cases, it's medical tourism to countries that have national health care, like Rand Paul famously getting fixed up in Canada.
Sometimes, but there's also ones like Vietnam, right? It's also places like that too, where what they basically have is it's a privatized hospital. All the people, because of our terrible immigration policies, we train doctors and send them back to their country when they want to stay here. So because of our bad immigration policies, we actually have assisted with medical tourism. So I think, there's that issue. So I wouldn't want it to be where there's no other option. If I believed, and I'm not sure I do believe this, but if I did believe that in reality, a single payer system would actually provide better service to everybody, I would still want the option of having privatized insurance if you wanted it. For example, unions might want it, individuals might want it, entrepreneurs might want it, doctors might not want to work for that. So I'd still want to have it there. And what I believe is if that's the best way, then people wouldn't go to the private insurance that much. It would be a small part of our it'd be a niche within our country. And if that's the answer, I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with the idea of saying, no, the government decides. And here's the reason why. Never have I seen, and I could be wrong, and I'm open to being wrong here. Your chat, by the way, is really a bunch of assholes, but that's okay. I expected as much.
I think it's a matter of, I think some of that's a matter of perspective. I
expected that, but it's fine.
I would also say that when I go on libertarian shows, I don't read the chat, and there's a reason. But yes,
no, but my people are good. They will never be mad at you. My people are
good. Well,
my people are good
in the future.
No. Yes. My people are good. Okay. But in any case, I've never known of a monopoly that really services its people very well. It just isn't that common. Can this be the exception? Maybe, but it's hard for me to see it as the exception when, again, the medical field next to the medical field, which is the non-essential, everything's gotten better. When it comes to the essential, everything's gotten worse. When you add the insurance company and you add the government together, you've got two Goliaths, right? The private Goliath and a public Goliath together. And I feel like things are just don't work. That's what I would say. And I think monopolies tend to not be the right answer. And most people would say monopolies are bad. I would agree.
Yeah, well, I think the private monopolies are bad. I think public monopolies can be very good. Without the problem with private monopolies is having the lack of either form of control that ordinary people might otherwise have. Either the limited form of control that you can have in the private case through freedom of exit, or the I think much richer form of control you can have through all the Davids. Collectively owning something and getting democratic input on it. However,
wait. So are you saying that you would want this to be a cooperative?
So I think that all I'm saying is if the state owns something and the state is democratic, then there is some way in which the public has influence over this thing, however indirect, however imperfect. Whereas if it's a private monopoly, it's a completely different situation because the CEO of the company is neither up for election nor is an appointee of somebody who is up for election. But I'd also say that in
our current system, that's not true.
In this particular case, in this particular case, I think there's evidence that public monopolies lead to better outcome. And in terms of the point about options. Sure, I want people to have options, but I would ask, what are the options that are most relevant to meaningful freedom in practice? And I'd say that right now, most people are not particularly emotionally invested in whether the parasitical middleman between them and their doctor is Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna. I don't think most people care about that. In fact, most people, when they're trying to pick between health insurance plans, are hopelessly confused and have trouble seeing the difference. Even professional economists, in some cases, trying to choose healthcare plans, report having those feelings. But the kinds of decisions that people do care about are things like, do I have to stay in this job I hate? Because if I quit, I would lose my health insurance, and I don't know how quickly I can find a job. Those things seem to be much more important freedom issues than whether you get to decide who your health insurance provider is.
No, the last part you said I agree with. The first part, I'm not sure I buy that, right? And if you look at today's world, the way our politics is now, with the left-right paradigm, the Democrat versus Republican right now, we have almost no control. We just basically, everything's gerrymandered to where the red wins the red, the blue wins the blue. There's a couple key spots in the middle that can change over here or there. They're the important ones here or there. Most of the people who are running things are appointed, and so we don't even vote on them. I see it in my state constantly as commissions on everything where everyone's appointed by the governor and we have no say in them. I mean, even my point about the DMV that I brought up early on, that's because of a commission. You don't even have a way of fighting the commission. Nothing. So I think in theory, maybe you're correct that we could vote the bums out. Yeah, but we don't. What is it? 90 some odd % of all Congress people get reelected, even though the the approval rate of Congress like 11% or something like that. I mean,
Yeah,
we don't vote people out.
Right now we have a system that's formally democratic. It's not that democratic in practice for some of the reasons that you've mentioned, and also a lot of others. I would argue that the primary reason that it's not very democratic in practice is that concentrations of wealth always, everywhere, and inevitably lead to concentrations of political power. That
sure,
if you work at an Amazon warehouse and you try to call your senator's office, you're lucky to speak to an intern. If Bezos calls the same office, he will absolutely get to have a conversation with the senator. So if you agree with that,
why would you want to do that in this environment?
And by the way, I'd say that the shitty half democratic political system that we have right now is way better than a entirely and openly undemocratic system, which is what you have with private insurance providers and other private companies, which are openly not under the control of the larger public. That you and I
disagree completely.
Oh, okay. Well, that I
completely.
Okay,
completely. I mean, if we're assuming that the government doesn't create a monopoly, which in many cases it has, but assuming it doesn't, then it does have, the people do have power, and they can have power by selecting another option if we've created an environment where there can be many options, right? Often a government creates an environment to where there's an oligopoly? Is that right? Oligopoly or monopoly, right? That's very common. But if you've got more options, you go someplace else. The problem is in many cases, it hasn't worked that way, right? And again, I'll bring this up example, Forward or health shares or things like that. There's an Oklahoma special surgery hospital. These are minor things that pop up that have other options. People go there. They go out of their way to go there, and they have another option. They are speaking. You're seeing it happen now with third parties, right? People are leaving the Democrat Republican and looking for third parties. Or they're trying to, but the system makes it to where you have to go left or right. But you do see when there is something viable out there, the early adopters go there. And when the early adopters go, wait a minute, this thing worked. iPhone, insert thing here. People then follow.
The third party example is probably not great since given that as I'm sure you know very well from your experience. I mean, this is
it's a government run duopoly.
Okay, so I think there are really two things here. So one of them is whether freedom of exit, which is what you're talking about, right? That if you don't have voice, you can at least have exit. You can go, you can take your business, you can take your business elsewhere. Whether that is as meaningful a level of control over something as actually collectively owning it and getting to vote for the people who run it. I would argue that certainly in terms of our lives as workers,
you weren't talking co-op. You were talking about people voting for a governor or voting for an elected representative.
Yeah, getting to vote for a governor who appoints something is better than having that person be somebody you don't get to vote for at all, and you also don't get to vote for the person who appoints it. Getting to vote for them directly is even better. There are these things come in degrees. But I would certainly rather have important services be in the hands of people that had some kind of democratic influence.
I'm going to give you an example. Okay. And the example is cable companies, right? Cable companies like the Time Warners and the Comcasts of the world, right? Basically, the government gave them monopolies in their local areas, right? So they basically created a cartel system. There'll only be Comcast here, or there only will be whatever here, Verizon here, whatever. They basically created a cartel system. And if you ask anybody what the service was, it was garbage. Now, we voted for those people, and we could have told them, stop it. We could have voted for it. Was the government. This was a government plan, a government scheme. We didn't. You know who stopped it? Satellite did, and Netflix, because we took the choice. We said, I'm not going to take this. I'm going to go to Netflix, or I'm going to go to Hulu. And now they're struggling. I'm going to go to Dish or DirecTV or whatever. Literally what I talked about just happened. You were stuck with a cable company. That's what you got. And if it sucked, oh well. Well, Larry, I could vote for my governor or my local city council. You couldn't. Nothing was going to change.
But the example you're giving is not of an actual public service. It's of government establishing a
monopoly.
A private monopoly is the key word here, which I think is very, very different. But I am really intrigued by something you said. I don't know. I think maybe 5 minutes ago, which is that you agreed with the point that concentrated wealth leads to concentrated political influence.
Yep.
So one would think that given that, if you want distributed political influence, you are going to have to redistribute wealth. But I'm guessing that's not your view. I mean, what's the?
I said it was. I literally did say it was. I want more and more Davids. I want more. I want an environment that does not encourage monopolies and that encourages little guys. Let me give you an example of one of my policies. All right. I'm not talking theory. I'm talking actual policies. One of my policies was in New York State was to allow that if you were going to be the copies of Wyoming law, if you want to be a small business owner in New York State and you agree that you will sell only within New York State and no place outside of New York State, and you agree to that, you are immune from all federal regulatory bodies. Only difference is you must be transparent and you must post, we do not follow federal guidelines. That's it. Now, what does that do? Is that magic? It isn't magic. But does it help the little guy? Yeah, it does. Because if you go to most small places, most towns around the country, most of the businesses are franchises, right? Most of them are actually big business, somehow franchising out to other people. Most of them, the owners aren't part of the communities. Most of the managers even aren't always, depends on where you're going, but often managers aren't even doing that. So that's an idea to get them to do that, but I'm not done. Also giving them an option that if you hire someone, for example, if you hire an ex-con, if you hire someone with a record, you know what? You do that. If you're a small business, we're going to give you extra protection against lawsuits, which you know is going to happen, and no payroll tax for that person for 2 years. Now, people say, well, Larry, then these new businesses will just hire people for 2 years and then get rid of them. Good. You're training my prison population. Thank you for that. That's awesome. You're giving them a second chance at life, and they're moving forward. You do that, and all of a sudden now the little guy has a better chance of survival. You need like 4, 5, 6, 8 rules and regulations like that to give them any shot. But that's the kinds of things I'm talking about.
Why not just ban the box on employment applications?
I would love that. I would love that.
All right, that's good. So
my mother was a convicted felon. I know that well. I had her lie. In fact, the reason why I became an entrepreneur, true story, I became an entrepreneur because I was so tired of my mom being a hostage at any job she had, because she was a hostage. She couldn't say anything because if she lost that job, there was another one out there for her. There was nothing out there for her. So you know what we did? We bought a truck and we started a trucking business. And I ran that trucking business for 2 years. My mom ran that business until she retired. And when she retired, New York State's so oppressive, she had to move to South Carolina to retire. But it's fine. She still ran that business until she retired. She was clean for 20 years. And she was a convicted felon who ran a business. Actually, I ran the business, but I put it on her name because I want to make sure that if she's the boss, nobody can fire her. So I get the ownership piece, brother. You and I are simpatico on that, 100%. All I'm saying is I want people to grow versus me giving.
So this is it's interesting. Since we're nearing the end of our time together, I want to go back to one thing that you said, say something about it, and then I'll let you have the last word, at the end of the discussion. But you said that you want to help the little guy, and one of your first examples of that was about exempting, making it possible to exempt businesses that only do business, in a state from federal regulations. And then actually also, just now, talking about the, about convicted felons, you were talking again about, small business ownership, but in, the little guy in question in that first example is the small business owner, maybe the relatively small business owner.
Or the farmer.
But the, yeah, sure. I mean, same principle, but of course, that might help. Yeah, that might help that small business owner, by giving them a competitive advantage. One person that's definitely not going to help is the person who works for the small business owner, who now their boss is exempted from regulations that might make them pay them more money. It might make them have to give them breaks. It might make them have to have certain health and safety protections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this, I think, gets down to a very fundamental difference. And it's the last thing I'll say before throwing over to you for the last part, is that I think the worldview, right? Like you said, simpatico, and we're thinking that that ownership is really important. But in like most people in a traditionally structured business, most people are never going to be small business owners, just structurally, right? They have, you are going to have more people. I think even in a society where ownership was somehow, and again, I'm very skeptical about the road here, but was somehow vastly more distributed. So you didn't have the giant businesses that you have right now. You had the average size of business was much smaller, etc. All of those things could be true, and it would remain true that most people were working for those businesses. I mean, you can't have, I think, a modern complex society where every person, or even really a majority of people, are owning their own little business of one person. So it seems like the level of little guys you're talking about here is not the littlest guys, who are the people who are actually wage laborers.
No, I'm not against the wage labored person. Maybe I wasn't clear on that. To fix the ills of our nation or even an individual state, there are, dozens of policies that have to be changed and adjusted, right? Tons of them, right? No worry, Joshua. I love you, brother. It's all good. It's all good. I get yelled at all the time. Totally fine. All the time. The things I brought up were to get you to see conceptually where I am. That I hope you and your audience see that I am trying to do the same thing that you're trying to do, meaning the same outcome. I want a better outcome for everybody, particularly the little guy. So are there other things we should do? Of course. Remember, my Medicare plan was giving the poorer, the most poorest people an opportunity to get to the best doctors and to change the environment for the best doctors to take the poorest people. I'm just going a different way. I hope your audience sees that I am arguing in good faith, and I do want the best for everybody. Now, do we disagree on how to get there? Probably. It's obvious we do. But without question, you see that I'm trying to move us all forward. And I think ownership as a concept, and let me go one step further if I could. I also have ownership in the idea of public housing. I think we can use public housing to get people to have more of an ownership mindset. Right now, we could easily have a situation to where everyone who's in public housing has an opportunity to buy their own home. Some people won't want to, but some people will. And as always, early adopters will jump on board and hopefully others will grab that. I want people to feel like they have ownership. I grew up in a poor neighborhood. I grew up in the South Bronx in the 70s in New York City. That's not a good neighborhood. Still today, it isn't great, but it was far worse in the 70s. And what I saw, which was difficult, was when I was a kid, a lot of people did a lot of things to make money on their own. Girls would braid hair on the stoop to make money. Cabs wouldn't come to my neighborhood. So we had gypsy cabs. The guy would paint one side of his door, one door, different color. We know he was a gypsy. We know it was gypsy cab. And people would make money. Now we have Uber. We didn't have Uber back then. Right now we have to have a license in New York City to braid hair. It's $20,000 to get the license if you have to go through all the schooling to braid hair. So we stop this without question. We stop this when I want people to have ownership of their lives. And I'll go one step further if I could. There are too many people in this world who have lost hope. I'm sure you would agree with that. There are too many who've lost hope. So they act self-destructively, or they don't care, or they surrender. I would like people to have some real hope. Hope of owning whatever life they have left, and hope of being better in their life. I saw it with my mother. I see it with myself. I see it all the time. I want people to have some more hope. If you have hope, you tend to try to do better and be better. I focus often on happiness, right? And I know it sounds trite and sounds silly. I'm literally writing a book on happiness. That's how much I care. I think happy people do great things. Happy people are better. Government cannot give you happiness. What government might be able to do is give you a living to survive. That's possible. That's possible. I'm not against a negative income tax, UBI type scheme, something like that. I'm not against that type of thing. I would rather it not go through taxation, right? I think we can find other ways to pay for that. I believe that completely. But we can do something like that. But that won't make you happy. That'll just mean you won't starve, which is a good thing. I don't want people starving.
Well,
but I also want people to strive for things.
Sure. I mean, I've always liked. Corey Robin has a line where he quotes Freud on the purpose of psychoanalysis is to reduce hysterical misery to ordinary unhappiness, and I think something comparable is true politically, that we can avoid certain avoidable causes of unhappiness. We deeply disagree about how to do that. Whether that lies through collective ownership, taking some of the necessities of life outside of the market, etc. But I certainly don't doubt your good faith, and I appreciate your coming on the show to discuss this. Could
I ask one question before we go?
Sure,
Do you have to run
sure.
right now, or can we go a little bit longer?
We can do like 2 minutes. What's up?
All right. I just have. It's just curious how you feel. Do you see an individual as either being a capitalist or a worker, or do you see shades? I know some people who believe in the value of socialism are very strict on how they put those two people. I think there's only two classes of people. And I guess why I brought this up is the idea of people who I've worked with in the past. Someone who is, say, a worker, but they work in a private equity fund or a hedge fund or something like that. So they're getting paid a salary, but they get paid massive bonus based upon the amount of money that they put in or the return they get on an investment. Their action is capitalistic. However, they are a salaried employee. And while they're not yelled at every day or told to come in at 7, they have very harsh numbers they have to make and certain percentage they have to make for them to get their bonus. Do you see that person as a worker, as a capitalist, as both? Neither?
Yeah. So I think that there are clear cases, and I think there are muddy cases. I think that Eric Olin Wright is a Marxist sociologist who has a whole categorization scheme that has like a couple of other social layers, besides the two. And I think that in individual cases, sure, you can have gray areas. I think that you can have people who, because parts of their, I think in some ways I'm in a gray area because part of my income comes from in a context in which I guess I'm technically a small business owner, which would be this show, and part of it comes from stuff that people pay me. And I think in individual cases, it could be that there's like a very clear, like, okay, clearly the bulk of your income, this is what your predominant interest is as a worker. In some cases, as a capitalist. In some cases, maybe as something intermediary, or it's just a weird gray area. But I think that's true of most interesting and important concepts. That you're going to have clear cases, and you're going to have gray area cases, and the gray areas the existence of the gray areas doesn't invalidate the existence of the clear cases.
And I guess the last piece I'll ask, thank you for that. That's clear for me. The last piece I'll ask is, everything I've said requires, in my perfect case, no extra force, hopefully no force at all, but no extra force, and no extra taxation. I feel like what you want would include both. Have I misunderstood you? I remember you mentioned once about mutinies and pirates and such.
Oh yeah, you watched my debate with David Friedman, sure.
Was it David Friedman? Was that what it was? I don't remember. I saw someone sent me a clip.
That was the context in which I used.
So I didn't know if that was joking or if that was real. That's why I was asking.
Sure. I mean, I think that if you're, I think if you're conscripted to be on a 18th century pirate ship, or you even people who maybe voluntarily did it out of desperation, by the time you're there, you're in a pretty brutal situation. I'm pretty sympathetic to them doing it. I think that we could have a much more peaceful and democratic route to systemic change now. But I think that
so you're not for us mutinying now?
So I think it depends what you mean. I think that'd be a much larger situation. But I think the only context in which I'm really in favor of the use of violence would be cases like the analogy would be like Chile in 1973. Salvador Allende is elected on a democratic socialist platform, and Henry Kissinger and the local generals and everybody violently oust him. I certainly would have been in favor of the Chileans, violently stopping that, from happening. But in general, yeah, no violence is better than violence. I think the democratic, legitimacy is the most important thing. But on the two things you asked me before the pirate ship part were about force and about taxation. And yeah, I mean, I think that that taxation, even higher levels, I think that increasing taxation when it's redistributive, when it gets it takes from private Goliaths to give to David's is a positive. And on force, which is where when I started asking you about the legitimate role of the state at the beginning, you kind of indicated, well, I'm a pragmatic libertarian, I'm not, I don't have the sort of absolutist views that some activists, might have, so we sort of went away from that more philosophical level of discussion. If we were going to maybe in a future discussion talk about that, then I think we'd also have big disagreements about there with what counts as force, because I think even having private property, there's force baked right into that, that this is something that you're able to exclude others from. And I think oftentimes when philosophical libertarians say, oh, I don't like force, there's this kind of trick where they're saying, sort of excluding that from counting as force, only redistribution, only redistribution against the will of current owners counts as force, whereas just forcibly enforcing current property arrangements doesn't count as force. And that's where I think we'd have a big disagreement if we got into that discussion in the future, when you come back.
I'm not sure we disagree, because my piece here would be that I just don't want to have any policies that add force, right? That's really what I'm talking. I don't want to have any policy. I want to try to get to where I want to go. I'm okay if I go there slower, as long as I change culture and people want to go there. That's really my number one thing. I want to create a world to where people want to go there. That's my issue.
I mean, if decreasing force means that, means that we live in a society where, less state violence is happening, or maybe even less violence of any kind is happening, certainly where fewer people are imprisoned, then yes, I think that that we should want a society with less force than we have right now. But I would say that doesn't necessarily travel along the axis of the more sort of market friendly and libertarian the policies are, the less force you have in the society overall. I mean, I'd compare A, the welfare states, and B, the prison populations of Norway and the United States, for example. And, we could argue about causality, but I think at the very least, that shows that those two can come apart.
They have a much better system for sure.
All right. Well, we could easily keep doing this for hours, but
I will let you run, brother.
We are.
I appreciate your time completely. Thank you so much, my friend. Let's talk again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Larry. All right. So that was Larry Sharpe, who was the Libertarian candidate for governor of New York in 2018, which is a fun discussion. I should, by the way, say to Kevin in the chat that he was saying a few times, why is nobody talking about regulatory capture? I think we did talk about regulatory capture. We didn't use the phrase, but we were certainly talking about the concept, talking on both sides. I think my view, of course, being that to have that the solution to regulatory capture isn't to eliminate regulation. It's to expropriate the captures. But in any case, we are going to go to post now. So with for patrons. The link is in the description. I think people were having a little trouble with that earlier, by the way, the Patreon link, but I think it's been fixed. In any case, it's patreon.com/Ben Burgess. So we're going to go, of course, obviously, if you like the work we're doing here, please do support us. You get the post game every Monday night. You get a Patreon episode every week that drops on Thursdays. So extra episode every week. You get the Discord, you get the Discord movie nights, the Discord office hours. But most importantly, it's not a service. It's solidarity. If you like the work that we're doing here, if you want us to pay Kale more money, join the Patreon. But in any case, but in the post game, we are going to be talking a little. Well, first, Kale's going to tell us about a book you read. We're going to.
It's a big accomplishment, people. So
yeah, he read a book. Like he didn't skim it. He didn't just look at the pictures. You read it, right? Yeah.
No, I got to the end.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to celebrate Kale's accomplishment, and we'll hear about the content of the book. We are going to be revisiting a brief debate that I had with Gavin McGinnis at the beginning of the pandemic. We're also going to be joined at a certain point by Cole James Cash, podcaster, musician, and the source of the intro and outro music for this show. So lots of stuff going on in the post game. I should say on Wednesday, friend of the show Daniel Bessner and I are going to be having a bit of a struggle session. Not calling it a debate, but we can all sip bourbon and have a discussion about January 6th and the article that Danny and I wrote about the 6th for Jacobin and the criticisms they had of that on the Know Your Enemy podcast. So that's coming up on Wednesday at 8 p.m. And on Friday, of course, we have Philosophy Friday, Sunday night debate breakdown. So, Kale, anything else you want to plug before we go? Anything coming up on Jacobin?
Yeah, if you don't know, I'm the producer for Jacobin, in addition to the producer for Give Them an Argument at the moment. And this week on Jacobin Show, we have Adolf Reed and Walter Ben Michaels. There's some other little fun things that are going to happen, but that's the the main event. That's on the that's what we're billing. And we're actually, and then for weekends, we're actually going to have Vivek Chibber on because Vivek is writing a bunch of articles right now, and so we gotta talk about them. Gotta talk about good articles. So it really, I'm downplaying a little bit, we're actually kind of have a pretty nice stacked week, and we're moving to a slightly new model soon. So keep your eyes. I accidentally leaked the video earlier, but it's private. It'll come back up. A slightly new model soon in the future for Jacobin Video. It helps us out. We think you'll be down with it, and there won't be much of an ask, but a lot more Jacobin Video stuff coming up in general. But this is a good week if you're into anti-essentialism, anti kind of disparitarianism on the Adolf Walter side, and then you want some you just want that nice good kick of why is it that the left is disconnected from the working class? Ooh, we got the good guy to tell you that one. We got the Mr. Marxism himself to go into why the working class and why we got to be reconnected with them, why we were disconnected, why we got to be reconnected. So I don't know, Jacobin shit. It's capitalism is bad and Marx is underappreciated. That's kind of our motto.
All right, lots of good Jacobin shit coming up, lots of good GTAA shit coming up. So check all of that out. If you're a patron, you should already have the link to the post game. It's been posted on the Patreon a few minutes ago, and I will see people there in just a minute. Left is best.
Left is best.